Hey, Internet. This is Nate. You can also call me Nathan. Please never call me Nathaniel. And welcome back once again to the Planet Crafter, where we just literally had an update drop today. And let's talk a little bit about where the game's at and where I think the game could go. So there's a lot. Like, I would say right now, especially with this new update, we're talking about, for a new player, I think a full playthrough, doing everything up until about the point that we're at, an average player, anywhere from 10 to 15 hours, depending on how slow they play. I mean, I played pretty aggressively. I'm like on the shift bar the whole time. So I'm running the whole time, doing everything very, very aggressively. I don't think everyone plays as aggressively as I do. So I would say 10 to 15 hours of gameplay in the current patch in your first run. But as of right now, not a lot of replayability, because it's more or less you're going to be doing the same thing again. What I think is really cool is the whole terraforming aspect, the fact that the environment pretty dramatically changes. We have this entire area fills up with water as you terraform. The ice caves melt as you terraform, unlocking new areas. All of the different exploration, like the exploration here is super cool. You have several different ships you can find, tons of varied environments. It doesn't all look the same. You've got the iridium caves, which are kind of like fiery looking. You have the sulfur area, you have the massive sand walls, you have the canyon area, you have this lake area, all super cool. It's really cool to see the sky change as you play. So going from that kind of orange haze when you start until now it's like pure blue skies with clouds. You get rain effects, also very, very cool. Meteors, very, very cool. And the fact that they're actually practical, like you use meteors to get new supplies and stuff, very, very cool. When you start getting seed spreaders, you start to see the growth of grass and stuff everywhere. Like, all of that, the whole terraforming aspect of the game is very, very cool, very, very interesting. I like it a lot. Clearly, there are, I mean, it's not even a guess. There are plans to terraform further, right? Right now, we're at trees. There were insects. There was fauna. My guess is that that comes with its own terraforming. One question that comes up a lot that I've seen, creatures, combat, that kind of thing. Personally, I don't think you need it. I think the challenge should be in a different direction. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't see the need to have like big scary creatures. I do like the idea, and I think this was already in the list of planned additions, is that meteors actually do damage. They can hurt you, or asteroids, and they can also hurt your base. Totally fine, I think. Makes you have to think about base building, maybe put them into areas that are going to be safer, or have to build structures to block meteor damage, something like that. Totally cool. The other thing I also like in the game is that your progression is largely tied to exploration and your own effectiveness at terraforming, and that you have to do both. Compare this with like Subnautica. There's not really any progression in Subnautica or other similar games that's tied to like your own progression, if that makes sense. So like in Subnautica, you don't unlock stuff because your base gets better. And other survival games that I've played, it's very similar. It's largely tied to either generic experience, like combat based. So you get combat, and as you level up in combat, you unlock new things. That's for a lot of survival games. Or it's pure exploration. So as you explore, you unlock new things. You find blueprints, you find more stuff, and that allows you to craft more stuff. I like here that it's the combo. It's, you have to explore, because that's how you're going to find a lot of the resources you need to build out your new and better equipment. But it's also tied to your effectiveness at terraforming the planet. So most of the blueprints are behind oxygen walls, terraforming walls, heat walls, or pressure walls. I think that's super cool. I like that a lot. I think it's a different type of progression where the better you build your base, the faster you'll unlock new stuff. I think that's great. Aesthetics are great. I think it's looks very good. The animation's very solid. Really can't complain too much about that. I mean, obviously, like, this is not a AAA team doing insane textures. So the fact that it's such a small team, I think it's just 2 people doing all of the art and all of the development. This is really solid for, I think, that level. So, what do I think could be better? We'll go from, I think, least concerning to most concerning. Least concerning is not enough information. We have energy levels. We have blueprints. We have terraforming. But what I would like to see a little bit further as a next evolution of just like providing information would be details into what is driving the different numbers. So where's all the pressure coming from? Where's the heat coming from? Where's the oxygen coming from? And especially, what is factoring the most into terraformation? Is it oxygen? Is it heat? Is it pressure? Is it biomass? What is it that's driving this number to go higher, faster? Number 2, and I know this is already planned, but story, right? So right now the story is pretty thin. It's 3 messages plus a 4th hidden message that I found on that one ship. Not really a lot in terms of like, why are you here? What are you doing? And what's the context for all of the terraforming? In a game like this, I think it's really fun. It's actually one of the things I liked about Subnautica towards the end, compared to other survival games, which don't really have much story to them, is that Subnautica, like, there's like an overarching story, and there's an ending, and there's like, there's something very satisfying about like, hey, I made it all the way through, and I survived, and I escaped, and there was this kind of like alien thing, corporate thing, like all of that behind what was happening. Now I'm playing Subnautica 2. I assume it's going to be very similar, but yeah, I like that aspect of it, and I think if that comes into this game, it's going to be really solid. Now to get to the area that I think is most concerning and where I have the most thoughts about where the game could go from here. Challenge. The game gets strictly easier the longer you play it. You get all of your non-renewable resources become renewable. Oxygen, never a problem. Water, never a problem. Food, never a problem. It gets to the point where the game just becomes fetch quests, crafting, and waiting. Contrast this with a lot of other survival games where there's a big build-up to the last big challenge, right? So if in survival games that are combat-focused, it's the big build-up to the final wave or the final boss. You survive that, you win the game. Subnautica, big build-up. You got to go through the hardest area, and even though you upgrade all your stuff, still very tense, exciting. Get through there, tiny little fetch quest, and then you're done. Planet Crafter, waiting fetch quests. There's no real challenge. I'm never worried about oxygen. I'm never really worried about dying at all. And the aspect in general, like dying obviously needs to be more impactful. That's just in general. But the fact that the game just stops being challenging and becomes a waiting game. Like right now, there's no challenge. It's just like, if I want these numbers to go faster, I build more stuff. That's it. There's nothing more to the end game. So what I don't want is more of this. What I would hope the designers are not going to go into is like, yeah, we'll just pad the runtime of the game out by adding more things that take longer to build. That for me is very uninteresting gameplay. So the question becomes, how do you add challenge to a game like this? And I have some thoughts. One of the thoughts is tied into one of the things that actually happens in the game. So if you're new, sorry for spoilers here. But at the beginning of the game, this is all dry. And then later on, it becomes filled with water and becomes a lake as you terraform the world. What I think would be really cool is if there were more big planet-wide events like that. So let's take an example. And I'm not saying this is like the perfect way to do it. I'm just in my couple hours of brainstorming today, this was like a natural, what I thought would be a natural progression that would lead to some more challenge into the game. So let's imagine you start off the game and you start off in this area, but imagine that these mountains blocked this whole area and you were limited to this ship, the crater, and this kind of area roundabout. You couldn't go into the caves because they were filled with ice. You couldn't get to the Iridium caves because there was a giant canyon wall blocking all exits. So you're kind of stuck, which is fine. It's like a tutorial area. Also, a meteor just blasted into the top of my base. The whole area is sealed off and you're in kind of a tutorial area. There's one ship to explore and there's minerals to pick up and you can build your base. And you got a message. Hey, you're in this crater. You need to terraform the planet. First thing you're going to need to do is start warming up the planet and creating pressure to release or to get out of this area. So what do? You build your first base. You build your first wind turbines. You're building some pressure things. And you get your first iridium from the ship. And then you get to tier 2 drills. And you get solar panels. And your progression is kind of locked until you reach a certain pressure level when all of a sudden a massive earthquake rocks the entire planet and this entire canyon wall collapses here and over there. And suddenly the world has just blown up in terms of areas that you can explore. But a lot of the areas are still blocked off by ice. So you reach areas like over here, you can go a little bit into it, but then there's ice. And there's ice over here. But now you have access to the Iridium caves. You have access to the 2 new ships. And then there's a whole bunch of ice walls blocking the rest. You go into the Iridium caves and immediately you start taking damage. And you receive another message. You need to melt the ice caps in order to be able to find further resources. But the only way to melt the ice caps is to get more heat. And the only way to get more heat is to be able to go through the Iridium caves. And so what you have to do is generate enough oxygen to make the air less acidic. And once you get to blue skies, now you can enter the Iridium caves without taking damage. We start building up all these heaters and start melting the ice. And there's a counter effect. The lake is rising, and first off, because this whole area was blocked off, you very likely have built up your whole base in the lake. You know, it's getting all flooded out. So first thing you got to do is mobilize and build your stuff somewhere else. So you have this huge like panic of like, crap, my base is getting flooded. I've got to move everything up. You take apart your base, you move it up to here, but it doesn't stop flooding. It keeps rising and rising and rising. And the lake doesn't stop where it stops now. It goes all the way up to the top of these canyon walls. And the only way to stop it is by building drainage systems in different areas across the map, forcing you to explore new areas. So you have to build 2 drainage systems at the bottom of this lake, and you have to build a drainage system at the bottom of that lake, and you have to build a drainage system at the bottom of the other lakes. And that lowers the water level back down to where it's at in the game now, which is awesome. The other benefit is now you have all these areas that had ice are now explorable, which is where you need to get those minerals that you can build these drainage systems at the bottom of each of the lakes. Okay, water's down. It's good. Now we can start building more flora. And the counter effect of building new flora is you start having these poisonous vines all over the place, blocking off areas that you used to be able to get to. And the only way to get rid of these vines is to build rockets that allow you to spread this thing that kills all the plant lives. And that's the first time you build a rocket. You kill off all of this dangerous vines, which allows you to keep growing your fauna, your correct fauna. And because you now built this rocket, you can now build other types of rockets. One of the things that might happen is, like, once you get to trees, the trees grow and block sunlight. And let's imagine that you don't unlock your nuclear generators until this point. You've only had solar panels, but all your solar panels don't work because they're all blocked off by these trees. Like, I'm not saying this is exactly how it should progress, but I'm like, the idea is that every time you reach a step in terraforming, what would be great is if there's a new event that triggers, that causes you to have to change up your plans. Okay, I'm locked in. Oh, whoops, I need to drink some water before I die. I'm locked in, and now the only way to get out is to pressurize and break down the canyon walls. Okay, now I've got more freedom, but I can't get into these iridium caves because it's poisonous. The air's too poisonous, so I've got to clean the atmosphere enough that I can get in there. Now I can heat up the planet, but now the huge lake, water rising, I've got to stop this water from overflowing the entire area. So I go down and build these drainage systems. The water level then stabilizes and I can build fauna, but the fauna is dangerous and can hurt me. And then the fauna, once you stabilized it, starts growing into trees. And now, crap, all my solar panels don't work. I need to use nuclear power. So then I have to get meteors to come down, but those meteors are dangerous. They're going to start hitting my base. So I might have to build these protective things to protect my base from meteors that are going to bring uranium. And then great, now I've built everything up. Like, so you see what I mean? Like, every single step, it unlocks more. It also creates new challenges you have to deal with. That, to me, would be the perfect balance and how I would design the game without artificially creating challenges by, creating monsters and combat. So those are just some of my thoughts. Very curious what you guys think about that idea, that type of progression. Really like the game. Really excited to see how it develops. I think they've done a good job so far. So I believe they're going to continue to do well. Really like this update. If you haven't tried it yet, jump in, explore. It's been really fun. And with that, we'll end. This has been Nate. You can also call me Nathan. Please never call me Nathaniel, and I'll see you guys next time. See you later.